Hi, welcome to this month's monthly mini. This month, we're going to be talking about creating goals around leisure and recreation. My name is Val Madsen, and I am the Training and Development Specialist at Respite Association Wisconsin. I'm also, by trade, a recreational therapist. So I work a lot with leisure and recreation and really making sure that we can adapt and create high-quality goals for leisure and recreation. Within the respite world, it also relates because you want to make sure that individuals are able to participate and be able to experience leisure, experience recreation, and have a high quality of life. And so while oftentimes respite goals are geared more towards giving the caregiver a break, it's also good to have some just internal goals around respite or leisure and recreation inside respite so that respite's meaningful. It's great to give caregivers a break. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. But we should also provide meaningful activities for the individuals that we're working with, along with, if you're a caregiver, individuals that you're caring for. So we'll talk about a variety of different goals, leisure, what they are, and different ways to look at it. Okay. So definition, leisure. So leisure is really downtime. It's time away from work or other duties. So that is any of your downtime. So I know sometimes in my downtime, when I'm not actively doing a recreational activity, it might be scrolling on my phone, on social media. That's a leisure activity. It's a time when I'm not working or doing any other duties that are asked of me. Recreation is an activity of leisure. So it's something that you do for fun during your downtime. So I know that seems really basic, but it's important to understand what leisure and recreation is so we know how to create goals around it, and really figure out what it means for the people that we care for. So I want you all to take a moment and just reflect about leisure and recreation in your life. Is leisure time important to you? Is that something that you value, that you need in order to function? Do you need that downtime? Do you need leisure time? Is that an important quality of your life? Do you benefit? And how do you benefit from participating in recreational activities? So think of the things that you like to do. How do you benefit? And then does recreation increase your quality of life? If you take away those activities that you do and take away recreation, how does that change the quality of the life you live? I think it's really important for us to think about our leisure and recreation and the importance it is in our life so that we can make sure that the individuals we're caring for also are able to receive leisure and recreation. Things don't have to be structured all the time. A lot of times working with some individuals with disabilities, you want structured time but it's important to have downtime. It's important to do things for fun and not to always have goals. And I know that's a function of this talk is actually to talk about goals around leisure and recreation, but we do want to make sure that it's fun and it's not work. So looking at goals and objectives. So a goal is broad. It identifies the desired outcome. So increased self-awareness or increased self-esteem, increased participation. It's really kind of a very broad goal. What does increased self-esteem or self-awareness mean? An objective is going to be more specific. It's going to state how we know if the goal is met. And typically that's done in two ways. So we will go into each of these. And then I also want to mention that I will put in the comment section of the YouTube video, the PowerPoint handout, so that you have access to this handout as well. So looking at objectives. So the first way is condition behavior criteria. So conditions are a statement that describes the conditions under which the behavior is to be performed. So during the art activity, during this activity, during this period of time, but it defines the conditions around the behavior. Then the behavior is an action word that is an observable behavior. So chooses colors, interacts with others, though interacts can be pretty broad. So, is there more specific ways to look at that? And then criteria is how well or how often must the person do that behavior. So the example down below, during an art activity, Mary will choose paint and marker colors at least 80% of the time. So the condition is during the art activity, the behavior is choose colors, criteria at least 80% of the time. This makes an objective measurable. If you aren't able to measure it, how do you know the goal is met? So then also making sure, so this objective, if I had to guess, could be under a goal around, being able to independently perform a recreation activity. That's a very broad goal, right? So if we're then looking specifically Mary being able to choose paint and marker colors, then that's a way to meet that goal or one of the steps, because typically there's more objectives under one goal. The other way is SMART. Sometimes they're called SMART goals, SMART objectives, however you want to say it, but SMART stands for specific, measurable, action-based or achievable, I've seen, realistic, and then time. So an example, Mary will choose a board game to play during free time. So is that specific? Yeah, she chooses a board game. Is it measurable? Yep, we have a start and end time that we're paying attention to, and she's choosing the game. Is it action-based? Choose is an action word. Is it realistic? Now, this varies for each person, but is this something that Mary can do or something that we're working towards that we think she can do? And then is there a time period during free time? So SMART goals, even though there's 5 questions, it doesn't have to be a super long goal. It can still be a short goal, but it's figuring out, making sure it's measurable. Can we see it happen? If someone saw this that did not write it, so I wrote this goal, if someone else sees this goal, would they be able to measure it the same way I would? That's what makes a good objective. It's measurable no matter who it is that is measuring it. Okay. So now looking at recreation goals, and there's no right or wrong way to create recreation goals or leisure goals. But I'm going to go into kind of 2 ways that you could choose to go if you were creating these goals. One way is to focus on the recreation domain. So that would be physical, emotional, social, cognitive, spiritual, and looking at individual outcomes for each of those domain areas. Another way is to define recreation into leisure categories. So, and there's no set categories. The recreation domains, the physical, emotional, social, cognitive, spiritual, you kind of see that in a variety of spaces. But leisure categories, this is going to vary depending on the person. So some examples might be social groups or arts and culture, community engagement, outdoor, home-based, active, all of those different things, because you may want to look at your leisure or your recreation activities for the individual you're caring for in that way versus in the domains. But we're going to go into each of these different ways to look at recreation goals and look at them a little bit closely, closer. All right. So again, the domains for recreation, physical, emotional, social, cognitive, and spiritual. So let's look at each one. So typically outcomes that you see for here would be for physical, would be increased mobility, increased strength, increased endurance, restored function, improved blood pressure, tension reduction, restful sleep, higher energy levels. Some of these can be measured easily. Obviously blood pressure, that's a very measurable as a number. Others, it might be you figuring out how to measure it. So these outcomes could be listed under your goals. It could be listed within an objective, but again, it's trying to figure out what you want to do. One thing, when you start looking at the domains of recreation, so physical, emotional, social, cognitive, spiritual, sometimes there's 1 or 2 activities that might meet multiple domains. and that's okay too. So really, when you're looking at the domains, the recreation domains, you're looking for activities specifically for whatever your outcome you're trying to reach. So looking at emotional outcomes, that could be, increased emotional regulation, improve self-determination, increase optimism. There's so many out there. You can search and pull up some. Again, this will all be available to you online as well. Social outcomes, communication skills, interpersonal skills, social confidence. Those are all, again, big topics that are broad. So you're going to have to specify what that means. It's also important to, especially around social and emotional, looking at what that means for the person. And is this a goal you have, or is this a goal for the individual person? Communication skills that might look different for each person. So it's really very important to be person-centered when you're doing these goals. Cognitive outcomes, increased ability to attend, memory, concentration, following directions, problem solving, all of these things could fall under the cognitive outcomes. And then spiritual outcomes, feelings of balance and stability, ability to be introspective, decreased feelings of isolation, loneliness, identify purpose, meaning in life, all of those things. So that can all come under, the domains of recreation. So again, some of your activities might fit under more than one, but typically what you do is you're picking out your goals and objectives, and then you're planning your activities to meet those goals and objectives. The other way to look at it is under leisure categories. So again, there's no set leisure categories. This will be very person-centered, individuals' wants and needs, really looking at quality of life goals. So some examples of this would be, social outings, education and life skills, arts and culture, community engagement, home-based, outdoor, health and well-being, active. There's no right or wrong. So really looking at, again, going back to the definition of leisure is free time. So what are some big categories? Maybe it's community outings instead of community engagement, depending on what your goals are. So things you would find under some of these. So social outings might be developing friendships, improving social skills, experience new activities, improve self-esteem, positive social interaction skills. So looking at that. Arts and culture, it might be increasing cultural awareness, trying new things, developing interests and hobbies. Community engagement, foster good citizenship, encourage volunteerism, develop leadership skills, promote growth in identified abilities and interests, give back. All of these things could come from like volunteerism or other community engagement. Community engagement could also be participation in faith community, the faith community activities or events that they have. Home-based, develop life skills, improve decision-making skills, develop family relationships. All of those things could be part of home-based leisure. Outdoor, develop life skills again, encourage physical, emotional, spiritual awareness, increase physical activities. Those are all examples. But really, what I want to do is go back to the definitions. So leisure is time away from work or other duties. Recreation is an activity of leisure. So if it is work or not enjoyable, it really isn't leisure or recreation. So as we look at these goals and as we look at creating goals for the individuals we're caring for or individuals on your caseload, you really want to make sure, is this doing what it needs to do? Is this a goal that this person wants? I work with one family that really would like their their family member to be more interested in age-appropriate activities. But this individual really likes the things that they like, and that's okay. And so if that individual is being pushed to do activities that they really don't want to do or that they don't like to do, it's not recreation or leisure. It's, again, a work activity. They have to work to do it. They don't want to do it. It's not fun. So even though in the caregiver's mind that it's an age-appropriate recreation activity, it's work for that individual and it doesn't fit. So you really want to make sure that you are very person-centered and figure out what leisure and recreation means for that individual. What are their interests, their wants, their needs for leisure time? What does that look like? Is it participating with others, or is it having more downtime? If someone works a lot during the day and is around people all the time, their leisure and recreation might be quiet, alone, self-time, and that's okay. What leisure and recreation looks like to me is not what it looks like for each and every one of you. So you really have to figure out, what does leisure look like for that person? What does recreation, what is fun for that person? Because if we aren't able to have fun, then it's not worth doing as far as a goal for recreation and for leisure time. So then these are examples of leisure and recreation activities. Obviously this is not an inclusive list. There is hundreds and hundreds of things that you can do for leisure and recreation. But I do want to point out some things on here, such as social media or video games. Oftentimes we forget that those are appropriate leisure and recreation activities. Watching TV or a movie is an appropriate leisure downtime activity. For some people, that is a recreation activity. Now, saying that, I'm not saying during a respite shift or during an entire day that someone should have all or only TV time or video time or social media time, but it's something to be aware of and something that is an appropriate leisure activity for a lot of people. I know for me, it is. My downtime in between things might just be scrolling through social media. It's mind numbing. It's just some downtime. Books on tape or reading, that is a recreation activity that I enjoy doing for fun. It's not work for me. So really looking at each individual and what would be fun for them. What is something they can do in their leisure time without making it work. So as we write goals, I give you lots of examples of words you can use for goals and ways to write goals, but you do want to make sure that the end result is leisure and recreation and not increasing physical abilities. Well, that's great, but that could be work, and that's not really a leisure goal. If a leisure and recreation goal is to gain awareness of fun activities, being able to identify activities that this person enjoys, that's an appropriate leisure and recreation goal. It's not really looking at increasing physical activity. Well, increasing physical activity might be part of leisure and recreation. It has to be fun and not work. Otherwise, it really goes under a physical goal and not really a leisure and recreation goal. Does that make sense? I know I kind of talked, and goals are weird. You can make them how you need them. And so making sure that, again, what is the purpose of this goal? And what is the purpose of this goal as it relates to that individual to provide the best quality of life for that individual? So if you're really, really looking truly at leisure and recreation activities, making sure that it is fun, free time, downtime activities that they are, an individual is able to enjoy. Not just we're doing this game because I want you to do this. I have another family I'm working with that really believes all of her family members should be in a physical activity of some sort in order to stay in shape. Well, not everyone likes the same physical activities, but it's something that this parent really pushes and really wants all of her children to do. And she's getting some pushback from some of her older children that are just not interested in that. And is that okay? Is there other ways for them to accomplish that goal that's not work? Because if it's work, It's not recreation. Another way to look at leisure and rec activities is, and I should have put a slide in here, I just thought of it, but is like a dopamine menu is, and you can search that term, but it's different activities can give you different levels of dopamine, which is the motivator in your body, the things that make you feel good. So like I had mentioned, scrolling through social media doesn't really pump me up. So that is kind of a calming activity for me. It's a downtime activity. It's not something that I would do when I have to get myself motivated to go. Where maybe doing a hike is an active activity. That's not something that I would do right before bed to unwind and put myself to sleep. And so really looking at how each activity affects the body, you might use it in different ways. And so creating a menu of, really active, high energy, gets you pumped up, activities that calm. That could be reading, that could be movies, that could be Facebook or social media or walking, yoga, and so really getting an idea of things that are really fulfilling, things that give you just a little bit of dopamine, just a little bit of energy, and things that really help you unwind might be a good way to look at leisure and recreation and how they could be used in someone's plan. So again, just making sure that it's person-centered. I think that's the biggest thing out of today, is really making sure that whatever activity you choose, or goals and objectives you choose around recreation and leisure is person-centered and is in the best interest of the individual that is the person that you are caring for. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any point in time. You can find this and other videos on our YouTube channel. We do a monthly mini each month with different topics that is just a short bit of information, less than 30 minutes. And we will be announcing our fall 2022 lineup shortly. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and thank you so much for attending.